Mark Cuban is nearing 20 years as governor of the Mavericks and has experienced the league change from one with single franchise players like Dirk Nowitzki to the landscape we see today, where 6 of this season's All-NBA players already switched teams during the summer. Cuban wrote on his blog, quote, "The NBA is a talent-driven league. NBA stars are not just recognizable locally, they are recognized globally. Some feel that the player movement we have seen, particularly players asking to be traded or leaving teams to have the ability to pay them more money, is a problem. I do not. Mobility is the power that comes with being great at your job, whether it's in the NBA or any other industry. If you are one of the best, you will have the ability to decide where you want to work." I was on a podcast with Ethan Strauss of The Athletic today, and he told me there was a small market front office person who said, "Hey, when are you guys going to look into this idea that players are leaving money on the table? Maybe there's some under-the-table action that's happening, that they're being compensated for the apparent money they're leaving on it." I just thought it was so ridiculous. So, Brian, what is your reaction to Mark Cuban's?
Yeah, so he's completely going against the grain of his fellow governors, because last week at the owners' meetings, this was something that was discussed.
Governors' meetings.
This was something that was discussed at the board of governors, was, how can we keep these guys in place? And this is Cuban saying, you can't. And one of the things he said in this blog was, if you were a top programmer, I can't remember the example he used, but you were a top student coming out of college, you wouldn't expect that 22-year-old to commit the next 30 years of his career to one company. You wouldn't expect the best programmer to say, I'm signing with Oracle for the next 30 years. They would just go. He said, that's not reality. Reality is not putting down rules to keep these guys in place. Reality is that we in the NBA have to adapt to what's going on. And I think he used his blog a lot more. He hasn't blogged in a long time. He chose this venue to say something, to make a point to his fellow owners, who also just fined him $50,000 for leaking stuff. I think it was a little combination of that.
Well, Nick, so you weren't here yesterday. I got on my soapbox saying that the Charlotte Hornets were one of the main teams demanding a supermax in the revised collective bargaining agreement. And they got it, and then when they had the opportunity to offer it to Kemba Walker, they said, maybe not. And so, one of the things I always talk about is, or not always talk about, one of the things I'm starting to talk about more and more is all these rules that are designed to protect small markets ends up hurting, not only not protecting them, it hurts them. So at what point do you think, Nick, do we stop trying to make these rules, given that it never works out the way we intended?
There are always unintended consequences to rules that they're trying to plug in anyway. So there'll be more new rules and more unintended consequences down the line. But guys, players have more power than they've ever had in the league, and they know it. And I'm with Cuban on this completely. If you know that you have the ability to pick and choose where you want to go, pick and choose who you may want to play with down the line, use it. Right. The problem, though, to that point is when you have smaller markets that want to keep their guy, and you know that guys want to pair up and not play in a smaller market right now, I don't know what the league can do. This is all big market stuff, and that's who continues to win.
The decision has been made to make this a 30-team league. It is not going to be an 8-team league with just 4 teams on the coasts. The idea here is that Memphis can compete with Charlotte, can compete with New York. And by the way, I've said this before, I'll say it again, Memphis has outplayed New York and LA, at least the Lakers and the Knicks, for the last decade. The Spurs have outplayed them generally for the last 30 years. So it can work, but part of that means that there's going to be rules in place that are going to restrict talent, and also part of that means that there are going to be more small markets, and it's one market, one vote. It's not like, it's kind of like the Electoral College. You combine all those markets in the middle, they can outvote the Lakers, the Clippers, the Knicks, the Nets. And that's the way we're going to be. There are always going to be protections in place for the small markets, and the players are always going to push back on it. It's a push and pull, and the league is going to expand and change as it goes on. And that's just the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future.
It's weird to me because the protections never work.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports analysis and highlights, download the ESPN app. And for live streaming and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.